I'd like to start with a simple story. A young child brought across from one particularly damaged, broken, and somewhat in absolute disrepair country, and brought to a place of opportunity, a place where things can improve, a place where your life and opportunities definitely improve without a doubt. And in the course of that, this child starts developing maybe what you would call cultural identity issues. Some people would say they've lost touch with who they are. Some people would say they're not, in line with their roots, in line with the original ideas and structures that their older ancestors would have preferred them to go with. That we're not towing the cultural line that we were supposed to. But then I start looking into the story of that child, and I start asking myself more questions in regards to why that is the case. And sure, it could all boil down to the simple aspect of a westernized culture forcing people to start sort of abandoning the original ideals and sort of thinking outward. And that definitely has created quite a circumstance. But in it, it's also allowed me to look into other things. And what I started to notice is what appears to be a growing contingent of deeper, much more intense and widespread thinking young black men. And in that regard, that makes it an absolute win, an absolute, victory for the mind, victory for culture, victory for social structures. But as we continue in these times and we continue to grow and gain the knowledge required to maybe thrive outside in the global stage, we start noticing that it's no longer a positive trait. It's no longer the thing that maybe will take us forward. It starts becoming something even more damaging, ineffective. I would say it's maybe what you would probably refer to as the genius conundrum, or what I would like to call the African genius conundrum. It's in the recognition that some of us those who've managed to ascend beyond the standard thought requirements and thought processes expected of the everyday African man, are more seen as a potential anomaly. You see, the reason I chose that term is that I've probably spent more of my life feeling somewhere in the corner, somewhere lost. I've always convinced myself I wasn't 100% sure what the plot was, simply because I spent so much time, harrying over what some people would consider irrelevant things like global politics, geopolitical situations, in general. I remember even the Princess Diana thing at a young age being something that I thought was something everyone was concerned about due to lots of different conspiracies pushing around. I remember watching Zeitgeist at a young age, and I mean, sure, obviously now every other semi-functional conspiracist with a half-decent, possibly even half-assed channel like Alex Jones has that in their locker as something that they've seen. But where it's become a bit worrying is that as a trait that used to be celebrated, as a trait that used to be want to be achieved, it's now almost seen as your downfall. From a social perspective, from a societal perspective, from a relationship perspective, it's arguably the worst thing that could have ever happened. Not because we shouldn't, not even in the least bit, but because I started to realize that the concept of backward societies is based and rooted in the fact that growth and change is arguably the most frightening thing. I sit around a bunch of us, shockingly capable, intelligent, viable human beings who have so much to offer the globe. And yet between us, some of us can barely even muster the earnings of about $15,000 a month, simply because our society has never actively recognized where our skills lie. We've always been forced into a mold. We've always been forced to follow certain rules, expected to go to the right schools, expected to go study in the right universities, and you would consider that a prerequisite. But the thing about the genius conundrum is the fact that more often than not, when looked into on a wider scale, the higher tier usually consists of people who absolutely failed with that societal expectation, whether due to their own personal issues, whether due to circumstances beyond their control. These were not people who were able to successfully, perform fully in the scientific world. I mean, Zuckerberg himself is, as far as we know, a college dropout. And even though now that's a term that literally barely carries that kind of weight, it's something that if you're a person who's ever been maybe even unintentionally or incorrectly tagged with the term genius, it's something that will literally bother the living hell out of you for an eternity. Not being able to complete something that would be a minimum standard requirement for the concept of being a genius can really affect how you see yourself and will permanently have an impact on your psychology. And sure, that's a different story for a different day. But what I really, really fear is that because of that, it's placed us in an awkward hole, a sort of a pseudo-man position, an inability to achieve what is supposed to be the basic requirements, while at the same time trying to understand what are those requirements, why are they necessary, why do we need to be this way. Sure, I always say no man is an island, everybody has to be part of some kind of social circle, but the fact that the structure is almost absolutely imposed, and if you want to go against this grain, whether or not this grain is maybe accurately good for your health, good for your mental health, good for you as a person, whether it's great for your spirit, whether it's something you will thrive in, it's just never been that easy. It's never been that simple. I mean, something as simple as interactions become an absolute nightmare in some regards. Sometimes if you speak, you feel like you're speaking too much. Sometimes if you want to speak your mind, you feel like you're saying a whole bunch of incongruent garbage, which in itself makes sense, but to them, you might as well just be speaking Greek. And it disturbs you because you keep asking yourself, where am I supposed to be? If the world wants more intelligent people, why does the world want us to be dumb? If the world wants us to thrive and grow, why are they asking us to be stupid? If everybody wants us to be better, why do they still want us to be as fucked up as possible? And sure, we can go along with the conspiracy and the idea that it's all part of white society's plan to continue to keep the black man down, continue to shit him out, continue to, disregard any steps he takes forward. But somewhere along the line, it gets deeper than that. Because when your own society almost seems complicit in it, you start recognizing that there's issues. Now, I can always go back to the old classic thing of human beings were always built to compete against each other. Nobody wants to see someone thrive better. And if they suspect someone has even the potential to far exceed anything they can do, the first thing they'll do is crush that potential. Because remember, genius and self-confidence don't usually go hand in hand. More likely than not, the smartest in the room is most likely going to continue to deny any possible links to the concept of intelligence, simply as a means of distancing themselves from the pressure of needing to be successful. Because the biggest problem is that nowadays the assumption of genius is the assumption of pure intelligence and pure success. Elon Musk has basically broken the mold. And though we can be proud from an economic perspective to say that someone like Musk has managed it, it feels like it's because they've always just had the opportunity. And fine, I could break it down to a simple thing of saying, well, maybe that's why there's a huge societal correction and now the white man is officially the most censored human being. are black men are allowed to speak. You know, the white man has more to lose. The white man now can't say anything because his business, his career, his entire reputation is on the line. I mean, Kevin Hart managed to survive a slew of slanderous tweets, but sheesh, Johnny Depp, one accusation and he was basically taken to the cleaners. And though we all know in the end it was a far more complicated situation, the fact that the entire context had to be dragged out into the public sphere in order for everybody to get a fair shot at wanting to know what was going on, it worries me that level of exposure into someone's personal issues and private life was necessary for them to get a fair shot in society. And yet, you'd think, right, that all of that said, it would put us, per se, maybe in the advantage position, but down here, we haven't felt any of that. All I see is a world around me of people actively wanting to be dumber, actively wanting to be darker, actively wanting to be more toxic, actively wanting to cause more damage to each other, actively wanting to bring each other down as a means of being cool, or what is it now? Being, I don't know, raw, being gangster, being hood. Because those are now all the associations with the concept of cool. A concept that in itself is brilliantly esoteric, because it can literally be in the beholder's eye. I mean, there's so many different things that are cool that other people think are terrible. I think Warframe is the coolest damn thing in the world, but some people look at it and just see horrible, grotesque, ugly, space weird suits. Because our definitions will always differ. I will always look at it my own way, and they'll look at it theirs. But I digress deeply. I guess what I'm trying to say is, and the only question I wanted to ask, as a man in Africa, forced to deal with the most archaic version of understanding of intelligence and mental health, were we screwed? Were we so screwed just because of our demographic positioning? If I was any other race, I'd probably be heralded. I'd probably be considered an undiscovered gem. I'd probably be given opportunity after opportunity. Any business idea would be funded with unbelievable amounts of fire and fury. Concepts I came up with years ago might have even become huge. But I'm black. And I didn't finish my degree. So that's it. And I mean, I try, and I work, and I do everything I can on the outside, and I conceptualize, and I push, and I look for everything, but I don't see an opportunity where this intelligence that I've worked my ass off all my life to retain and maintain, this ability for critical thought, this constant, never-ending questioning of society's ideas, everything that happens around us. Did I waste my time? I mean, I don't want to go into a pure nihilistic state. I still have a lot of positivity, but am I wasting my time? Sometimes the only response I ever get is just move to Europe, move to America. I look at the state of America and yeah, black immigrant from Africa moving to a country where I'm potentially smarter than about 35% of the population, and the other 65%, the only differential between us is access to information. I don't see that going too well. I don't see that going well at all. I feel like I'd be the fastest target to an unintentional George Floyd type circumstance. And it would be easier to write off because I wasn't even American to begin with, or European. I'm African. We're disposable. African geniuses, who needs them? So from a demographic perspective, because my dad didn't choose to stay in the UK where he at some point was, and could have raised me, I got screwed. He wanted to have faith in Africa. Was his faith misplaced? I don't know. It feels that way. Do we have a place here? I don't know. Do I even have the right to call myself that term? Probably not. Maybe I can just refer to myself as a deeper thinker. Maybe I can refer to myself as hypercritical. Somewhere along the line, I even respect you sometimes goes even beyond that. When I think about even some of my friends, some of the thoughts, some of the conversations we have, to myself, I don't understand. We're not even that far off. Sure, this isn't pure physics. We're not discussing, how to completely reverse global warming. We're not theorizing, concepts far beyond even human imagination, the size and scale of the universe, contemplating how to be able to actually, break out of our current universal scale and actually be able to see the grand size of everything beyond us and comprehend that. And we might be able to converse about it, but we're not actively trying to do that because we were just trained not to believe we were capable. And though there might be a few breakout candidates who far exceed that, it's just too little of us. Are you telling me that in a continent of billions of people, there are only a certain number of us capable? I found it funny that when football started turning towards Africa, there was an unbelievable contingent of African footballers who suddenly made it. And though you could say now, well, obviously, physicality, speed, capability, everything was there for them. Obviously, they were going to succeed. Did you go back to football in the 60s and the 50s? When most African players weren't even allowed near European-based pitches, when African players generally were considered pointless. The infamous free kick event with one African nation that actually played the European nation, where they were forced to kick the ball away, and it was assumed that they were too simple-minded and stupid to understand the rules, when in actual fact, it was because their own president had basically threatened them with their own lives, that if they had lost with a specific deficit, they themselves were going to face brutal repression and brutal consequences. So why wouldn't that be the same case with intelligence? Why wouldn't our brains be able to develop at the rate that our bodies can? Why wouldn't we eventually be able to break the mold and start producing, our own greater thinkers? Why are we not recognized as much? Sure, in our circles, we recognize certain thinkers. But if we're talking about a global scale, they basically don't exist. I mean, I can offhand to believe, someone to believe and conceptualize something like that on our own. That we could think like that without being told to think like that. That we could develop these type of thoughts. And yes, they will be influenced by access to Western information. And they will be influenced by access to certain books and certain material and certain readings. But the fact is we can interpret it and develop our own ideas and our own mindsets, because that is where the stem and story of all geniuses come from. But in this current age, I just don't see any hope for us. I mean, I want to. I constantly want to believe, but you can only hold on to your childlike beliefs forever, for a certain amount of time, before you start recognizing that maybe nothing will go anywhere. But hey, this is a different type of video. It was more of a reflection and an introspection into how I feel about my own life versus how I see the lives of others around me who are in a similar context. I have a small team, small group of guys I work with whom I consider some of the greatest and some of the most intelligent I've come across, with ideas that have far tickled my brain cells more than anything I get given on YouTube or on the internet. Don't get me wrong, there are some geniuses out there, but there are also some geniuses here. It's just too bad nobody wants to listen to them. It's been your boy Taff, Geek Freak. Today, I guess I just wanted to finally say what was on my mind. I fucking hate Africa.